Welcome, Grimdark Enjoyers! Big thanks to all the recent subscribers and channel members. In this video, the Hive Fleet Gengar arc continues. Channel fans will know I often scrutinize and criticize GW's rules and design choices, and so I thought it would only be fair to allow others to do the same to me. So in this one, we'll go through 3 of my custom units for Hive Fleet Gengar. My custom Hive Tyrant, the Hive Knight, my custom Lictor, the Shadoweaver, and of course my custom Norn, the Norn Phantom. I'll share the features of each unit, their stats, weapons, and abilities, and share comparable standards for scaling purposes. And I suppose it would allow this video to demonstrate a kind of house rule rationale, one which aims for tasteful execution, while also providing me a good gauge on my own sensibilities. Here we go. We'll start in on the Hive Knight, my custom Hive Tyrant. It's been built to a larger scale than the current GW Hive Tyrant and is sitting on an 80mm base instead of the official Tyrant's 60, which I feel is more suitable for what a Hive Tyrant is, and what I imagine an up-resed Hive Tyrant by GW may end up looking like. In any case, the Hive Knight, speaking in Space Marine terms, takes on more of a champion rather than captain role in Hive Fleet Gengar. On the stats front, the Hive Knight shares the same profile with that of a walking Tyrant or Swarmlord. On the weapons front, things begin to change. The Hive Knight has a unique monstrous bone sword which I've named Abyssal Edge, and since he is a combatant-style epic hero, I've given it a split profile. On the strike, 7 attacks with lethal hits at strength 11, AP 3, 3 damage, and the sweep offers a 14 attacks at strength 6, AP 2, 2 damage. It's a weapon characterization choice that follows a similar format to characters like the Lion, which we can use as a ceiling of sorts. Compared to Fealty, which offers a greater number of attacks and has better stats on both profiles, this places the Hive Knight at a lower weight class than the Lion. And compared to the Swarmlord, the Hive Knight's strike profile can hit harder with more strength and AP, though it has 1 less attack and isn't twin-linked. Factoring in the benefit of the sweep profile, the Hive Knight is an overall more versatile combatant than the Swarmlord. But unlike the Swarmlord and walking Hive Tyrants, the Hive Knight brings no ranged utility to the table. When it comes to abilities, both the walking Hive Tyrant and the Swarmlord have abilities which muck around with command points. Such abilities are essentially expected on command-type characters. However, the Hive Knight, as mentioned previously, operates more like a champion, and should be justifiably different. Its first ability is Destiny Bond. At the start of the fight phase, you select an enemy unit in engagement range, and that unit becomes the bonded unit this phase. If the Hive Knight destroys models from that unit, it regains lost wounds. Or if the Hive Knight is destroyed, it can activate for a fight on death against the bonded enemy unit if it hasn't fought that phase. This ability gives the Hive Knight some staying power if this melee-only unit can manage to execute, and it gives it some defensive fight phase utility as well without going all in on something like Fights First. Its second ability is Warp Shield Symbiote, speaking to its other unique biomorph. It gives the Hive Knight a damage -1 type ability, and if an attack is psychic or has a damage characteristic of 1, the Hive Knight gains a 4-up Feel No Pain versus those attacks. That Feel No Pain versus psychic attacks speaks to Gengar's preference to consume psychers, as well as the use of a Zoanthrope headplate for the biomorph. Though the choice to extend that perk to damage 1 attacks is a principled one, as I find it a poor mechanical abstraction otherwise. If -1 damage abilities are trying to describe a superior defensive quality, why does it suddenly stop providing a defensive benefit against attacks which are damage 1, as per GW's rules writing? Here's the Hive Knight's datasheet in full. Give it a gander and share your thoughts. What would you point it to? I've settled on 215. It's less than the Swarmlord, and the same as a walking Hive Tyrant with the Synaptic Control enhancement from the Synaptic Nexus detachment, but without the ranged capacity or command point abilities of either. Next is my custom Lictor, the Shadoweaver. The most comparable unit we can scale to is GW's own custom Lictor, Deathleaper. On the stats front, the Shadoweaver shares the same profile with Deathleaper, with the exception of having 1 less wound, which I feel is suitable since it is a bit smaller. Comparing weapons, you can see the Shadoweaver has 2 less attacks at a lower strength, but those attacks benefit from a unique ability, Ghast, which gives those attacks +1 to wound versus Psykers. So the Shadoweaver is an overall worse melee assassin than Deathleaper, but has a niche advantage against Psykers. Now anyone who uses a Lictor will verify that 4 attacks isn't really enough to be reliable. However, Shadoweaver also has a ranged precision attack. Haunting Hypnosis follows the framing of Eldrad Ulthran's ranged precision psychic attack. And while it has a higher strength, it has a shorter range, and instead of anti-character 4+, it also benefits from that same Ghast ability as specified by the melee profile. On to Shadoweaver's abilities. Like Deathleaper, the Shadoweaver shares all the same core abilities. Things begin to differ when we move to the unique datasheet abilities. Dream Eater works like Feeder Tendrils, but works at a range of 12 inches to function with Haunting Hypnosis. And its second ability is Phantasmal Parasites. Instead of putting out an aura enabling earlier than usual battle shock tests, Phantasmal Parasites make the Shadoweaver more elusive, which can yield harder charges and push ranged weapons back into the lone operative threshold. Here's the Shadoweaver datasheet in full. Give it a gander and share your thoughts. Points-wise, I've settled on 95, putting it 15 points over Deathleaper. The rationale? Even though it's less fighty, it has ranged utility, and is more effective in its niche, which I think more or less balances out, but the 2-inch range evasion is such an exception, I believe it does warrant a higher cost. And last up we have the Norn Phantom. Naturally, the most comparable point to scale to is the Norn Emissary, though my converted Norn is on a beefier 120mm base compared to the Emissary's 100. On the stats front, the Phantom shares the Emissary's profile. The Norn Phantom's Claw Symbiotes deliver 5 attacks at strength 11, AP 3, damage 3. Now I'll preface this with a caveat of sorts. Functional strength 12 with AP 3 is the kind of baseline potency profile I think mech/monster grade anti-armor melee weapons ought to have. AP 2 on a Redemptor Fist and similar just feels unsuitable. The Claw Symbiotes give the Phantom 5 better quality attacks than the Emissary's Scything Talons, but with a lower volume of attacks overall. Over on the ranged weapon side, the Norn Phantom has Shadow Ball. It's a psychic attack that trades the Norn Phantom's multi-profile options for a one-shot Zoanthrope style attack, one which has higher strength and more consistent damage with a lower ceiling. That attack does have sustained hits D3 though, which I feel on these sorts of weapons better narratively abstracts explosive effects than GW's Blast USR. Moving on to abilities. I felt keeping the singular purpose and unnatural resistance of the Norn Emissary and Assimilator help keep the Norn Phantom in line with that established standard. In addition to this, I've added 2 abilities. The first is a Ghastly Haunter, which allows the Phantom to move through enemy models in the movement phase. This isn't the biggest get with its giant base, but in spite of that, it will always help it be more maneuverable than otherwise. The second ability is Vassal of the Hive Mind, which grants 1 attack sequence reroll when attacking. It's an ability I think all Norns should have. If the Norn creatures are the physical hand of the Hive Mind, it should have an innate means to shore up its control. Here's the Norn Phantom's datasheet. Tell me what you think. I've settled on 290 points for this one, which is far greater than the Emissary's 260. But offensively, its attack options are more potent, even though they are less numerous and versatile, and the inclusion of 2 extra abilities I feel justifies the higher points cost. Well, that's it for this one. If you enjoyed this video, there are buttons for liking, sharing, and subscribing. Thanks for watching, and a special thanks to Julius Maximus, as well as my other generous patrons and channel members. Channel members and patrons get early access to regular channel videos, as well as free access to various STL doodads. Just a little something for those who help keep the dream alive. Anyways, thanks again for watching, and I'll catch ya in the next one.